I've played a lot of indie side-scrollers these last couple years, and Gato Roboto has the most profound, world-changing potential of all of them. Let me back that up a little bit. Reviews of this game tend to reduce it to a cute, quirky, and solid take on the Metroid formula and go no further. Today, I'm diving way deeper into what makes it a great indievania of profound destiny, with a special technique I study in seclusion: Kirby theory. Putting the cat game in this light reveals way more of where the love and care were put into to show how powerful of a game it really can be. Kirby is known for its approachability and an incredibly high level of polish and charm. It's as cute and perfectly shaped as a marshmallow. The games are so consistently good, you're as likely to get a crap one as you are a rotten marshmallow. And playing it is about as hard as, roasting a marshmallow, maybe. It's got something adjacent to a Metroidvania, but I personally see Amazing Mirror as more of a 2D open world game, and I think other people agree with that now. As a long-lost cousin, Gato Roboto shows that when the charm, the game feel, and the approachability of that series are married with true Metroidvania progression, the results are an incredibly distilled shot of fun and empowerment that nearly anyone can get into. Getting past the gimmicks, past the baseline comparisons to the Metroidvania greats, I'm beginning with my first point, which is this game just feels so good like a Kirby game. The deepest root that Gato Roboto shares with Kirby is the high-quality game feel. Sounds good, looks good, plays good. Nothing seems janky, and nothing feels bad. If there's any jank, you made it yourself because you're exploring funny. The level of detail is quite high, including loads of little plants and mushrooms poking out here and there to create the abandoned yet alive feel. Rooms are meant to feel lived in through recurring coffee tables, expressive animations are given liberally to bring enemies to life, and the sound design is so good it sometimes hits a too real ASMR sensory issue for me, which is praise. The pointless destructible crates are always a fantastic touch for immersion, and you even get a meow button for the hell of it. Though if the devs are listening, I personally think the meow should attract enemies to you. It would help a few late game fights pass a little bit quicker, and it would be more immersive. If you do that, I'll make another video about Kiki the cat. Anyhow, one thing I absolutely love doing in old Kirby is bouncing up and down while passing through a narrow space just to feel how tightly my character controls, and this is pushed to some logical extreme during the cat-only sequences of this game. These are frequent pauses from shooting, necessitated by water or teeny gaps that your mech can't handle. They necessitate jumping, and leaping, and bounding, and jumping, leaping, bounding, jump, leap, leaping, hopping, because it just feels so good to do it. I honestly prefer Gato to Roboto in the early game because of how smooth and athletic Kiki feels when you've got the zoomies and you just want to run up everything as fast as possible. That said, as upgrades compound, jumping around and fighting with the mech becomes extremely exciting too. Switching from super fast Neko to super tough Mecho makes late game wicked energizing. None of this would have worked if feedback wasn't so satisfying on these moves and if the game didn't just feel so good, but they work great and it feels awesome and it makes Doinksoft look stupidly competent. This is a tiny, strange game that knows itself well. The monochrome Game Boy aesthetic allows for simplistic designs and lots of imagination, the retro thing that Pokemon fans miss these days. The style itself also becomes a huge source of fun through color palettes. The entire game can have its monoed chrome swapped just like a Game Boy can. They're refreshing each time, and good exploration rewards too. Think spray paint from the aforementioned Kirby Amazing Mirror. Likewise, enemy variety feels great thanks to the small number of worlds. Each was given their own pattern, voice, and animation, which builds that feeling of life. Tying this all together is something I've actually not seen appreciated in a review yet: the game's surreal, chill vibes tone. Beyond being cute, it has a flavor of what I've got to call being on a trip with its wacky creatures and bizarre scenario. The dialogue from Spaceman Spiff injects the game with a self-knowing wit, and while a Wall-E-esque silent journey without him may have had its own charm, This ups the fun absurdity. It honestly is the exact same kind of stoner humor my friends and I loved in high school. Like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if, like, a cat got stuck in a Metroid and, like, all these cutesy hell experiments were, like, trying to kill it? Yeah, let's play that off as serious as possible for a laugh and just see what happens. It's not hilarious. It's not too wacky either. It's just subtle and kind of warm. Then the music is so ambient, it's almost trance-like. But it can be dissonant as hell, too. It was hard to pick tracks for this video, because honestly, they're kind of unnerving sometimes. Now, I'm not the person to appraise this type of soundtrack right now, since it was pretty much my first time liking such an ambient one, but between the aforementioned total trip vibes and the ability to make your whole dang screen purple, there is potential to end up in a trance here. This game world has such good flavor. I fell in love with the mobs right away. Steam has little trading cards for each one, and I really want them all. I tried to interrogate the way their shapes play into the patterns for the game design, but honestly, who cares? Just look at them! They are like Pokemon to me. Official art of Kiki walking with them all really helped to sell me on the game, though I will say, some of their cries of pain make me sad. I mean, that totally happens, like Link's Awakening HD has some enemies I will not even hit, and it's not even a bad thing, to be honest. It just helps the game feel more alive. The bosses, for being mostly machines, are also pretty exciting. The designs reflect their patterns well, and I like them through association with their fun-ass fights. And their furnace fights. The Furnace Brothers are just neat. You gotta have the Furnace Brothers. With neat characters and an easily comprehensible world, the game makes a stark departure from its genre comrades by telling a straightforward story through 100% silly dialogue and almost zero ancient post-it notes. Gato Roboto knows it's short, and the plot fits that. It begins due to total coincidence, and escalates because you find old tapes about a mad scientist who's more involved than you might initially think. It's a nice degree of predictable, where you can get a hunch for where things are going really early, but you won't exactly pin down what happens, I promise that. The threat escalates as you learn more about what's going on and you keep seeing an evil rat, and I would genuinely take this straightforward stuff over picking up scrolls about an ancient apocalypse war from 5 million years ago most days. It curbs any ambition to go out to the avant-garde to tell that story, and I think for a 4-hour cat game, that was very deft. Halftime. You know the game feels really good, but how does it work? Of course, if the player is running one risk with this game, it also comes from that signature simplicity I've been talking about. You blast away enemies with a measly 2 levels of hurt in a genre where Axiom Verge has an unlockable crocodile blaster. However, it is hard to get bored when the game looks and feels this damn good. It's relaxing as hell, and that polish and spit on your moves pay off in every encounter. Then, it pulls you in with the charm and keeps you there with more quality. Considering its approachability, this game can end up serving as a veritable exploration classroom for newcomers, and these are the real meat and potatoes of the game, and my grand plan to tell all of my friends about it. Cat game, check. Appealing gimmick, check. $8 price tag, usually check, I think. But furthermore, how many games do you have that are so approachable they display the controls on screen? How many of these do you keep the 8 on for because they're cool? I've personally never seen a game pull it off as well as this one does. The buttons next to UI info for weapon cooldowns just look wicked cool, and they respond really quickly to inputs, which looks cool as shit, and I never question it. Metroid hands you a different grapple hook button in every single entry. Symphony of the Night uses a secret list of fighting game twirl inputs for spells, and I just found out yesterday, Hollow Knight has a hidden fast cast input a la L canceling that's just better? It's a lot to take in if you're new. Anyhow, Gato Roboto is rooted in controls so simple you might be able to play it on an actual Game Boy if someone tried, I guess? And the clean presentation of these things like your missile mechanics make the game feel even more polished and intentional. You survive by pistol and rocket. Pistol is a weak hit for starting fights, rocket is a strong one for finishing them. The pistol's light hits can sort of lock an enemy in place, but it takes a second to drain their health all the way down this way, so you're gonna want to use the tough rocket. This guarantees that your strong hit doesn't become a passive background thought like the super missile or the nail art. It's a serious, constant act of remembering. And this leads to baby's first resource management. Rockets consume not numbered ammo, but an overheat gauge, which jams up your arm when full and is really hard to miss with a clear UI focus and a dramatic fuck-up animation. This might be comparable to the magic meter in Link Between Worlds, but it keeps your heat budget really tight. This isn't spamming 5 missiles in a row. You can't get more than 2 out of this thing without hitting the starter limit. It takes a sec to finish off any enemy you have caught in the normal pistol tractor beam, so you want to hit hard as often as humanly possible. This pushes you to figure out the ideal rhythm for getting shots out, and it's satisfying. You find that the fastest way to get work done isn't spamming, but focusing and finding this rhythm, and that is a fantastic lesson to take with you into future Metroidvanias. Focus is better than freakout. Focus is better than spamming or mashing. The future games are going to demand specific timings for striking weak points, awkward wall jumps, or even Souls-like healing windows that don't always go the way you want them to. One early boss, when your rocket limit is still just 2 spams to overheat, demands rocket damage to ensure you learn this. Even though some fights could be handled with pistol spam, the most satisfying and elegant way to get through them is also timed rockets, which subtly pushes you to get better at both combat and conceptual resource management without demanding it of you. You just want to get better at the whole timing system, and you do it throughout the entire game. That said, if I told you there were a way to make that overheat tank bigger, would you do it? As a minimalist reinterpretation of the phrase, "what if Kirby had a mech," Gato Roboto can more than hold its own. But, as baby's first Metroidvania, oh man, it is set up just right for encouraging, teaching, and rewarding the core tenets of this ding-dang genre. Despite having a fairly straightforward intro, hub, 3 branches, and final area, this linear game has a pretty easy sequence break. I accidentally found it on my first try through experimenting with an early power-up and could easily see a newbie finding the same thing. If you see something out of reach, you might well have a way to trick your way up there early, and it encourages trying things. Now, I don't think this particular sequence break is a fun one for your first run, and I actually reset my game because I knew the level design was just so much better than this from what I've been experiencing so far. And yeah, it's just the right thing for like your 4th replay. But hey, it teaches you the concept really well. Sequence breaks, replay value, experimentation and reward. Yeah, this will get you thirsting for the right mechanics going forward. Thanks to this clever design, whatever you can't jank up to will be a pretty clear sign of what kind of new move you need next, teaching the idea of backtracking locations. But there's very little worry about getting lost here. It's like a shrunk down Metroid Fusion, which is to say more or less level based. The hub has a few very obvious puzzles to return to after each boss rather than a level select menu, so you should be getting a clue about where each of the 3 main worlds are without much strain. You're using your brain, you're not going to get lost, it's a good balance. This vanilla setup is spiced up just enough by the theming of each world, and they can sometimes include giant gameplay departures like a water, cat, submarine section. They make the big picture progression easy, but still fun. Now, fueling this is, of course, the movement upgrades I mentioned. And oh my god, they are like half the reason I'm making this review. Truth be told, I was feeling the oversimplicity in World 1 my first time. I actually started to prefer cat gameplay to suit gameplay simply because the shooting with no rockets was so monotonous. But don't worry, that's like 30 minutes of suffering max. Going through the worlds in a normal progression, you'll soon be stripped of that suit, and before you know it, you'll be put back into it with one of the most well-polished takes on a classic upgrade I've ever used that just, oh my god, just amps the fun up to 11. It makes everything better from then on. It's got its own puzzles to go back to and test it, and it will make every second of backtracking and getting around so much more entertaining for the entire rest of the game. things just, it's like exponential. They get better and better, and then they get better and better and better really quickly for a while. The game ends up feeling like a thrill. It becomes so exciting despite its simple Game Boy core. Every upgrade and move is tuned just right. Each enemy is just fun enough to fight. And the boss battles elevate things to such a peak of action that it's hard to believe it starts off as pea shooter Kirby. Like the best in the genre chibified, Gato Roboto hits you with empowerment in a way that I would recommend in a mad hurry to anyone who feels too afraid to play something like Hollow Knight. Your memory will be teased, environmental puzzles will be solved, missile tanks will be upgraded, and sweet, sweet replays will be desired. These games make you feel like you can do anything, and this one lets you start from basically any skill level. It's a direct shot into competence at Indievanias, and I will not steer you wrong when I say that it is a great lesson in what is to come. So, now we come to it. Why is Gato Roboto the most important Metroidvania right now? Well, think about this. You're a 2032 gamer, waiting patiently for Silksong, and it's thanks to your first Metroidvania, Gato Roboto, that you were able to live your dream of bowing to Grimm and Hollow Knight. Wouldn't the game that opened the door for you be the most important one? Doinksoft are now the few, proud, hard-working, and underpaid Metroidvania elementary school teachers our community has to rely on, and frankly, we should sing their praise. We can only manifest that, though, if we talk about the cat game right. To my utter shock and bewilderment, Doinksoft's next game might already be out when you hear this video. And if Gunbrella is as good as I'm expecting, people are gonna want to know about the other games they've made. When the conversation turns to Kitty Mech, you need to do what I taught you here today. Don't just call it a competent 8 out of 10 Metroidvania. Don't just call it a love letter or whatever. Don't simplify it. Point out its fantastic ability to turn genre newcomers into fans. Think about the point. Think about the people who should be playing this and recommend it to them. Don't bother recommending it to Jessica Talon 4. She already has 7 space explorations booked for this month, and the Axiom Verge sausage gun mutations never went away IRL for her. This might not be the right time. Instead, bring it up with newcomers. Bring it up with casuals, anyone who loves cats, and anyone who might enjoy some empowerment right now. The Metroidvania experience is one that kicks a lot of ass, and this game could be the first and warmest memory for so many people.